get into TV, radio and film. If this is the first time you're joining me, then welcome. It's really great to have you. My name's Samina Kiyani. I'm a broadcast journalist and TV producer. I've got over 25 years experience working in this business, and I wanted to put my experience to really good use and be of service to the next generation of creatives. I'm doing a series of interviews with some incredible TV, radio and film professionals to create a resource for young people who want a career in media. My guests will be sharing their pathways into this business, the pros and cons of their jobs. Yes, some cons as well, it's not all glamorous. And of course, be giving invaluable advice as to how you could follow in their footsteps. I invite you to join me and my guests each week. I'll be covering different disciplines. I'll be talking to people from all kinds of different backgrounds, age groups, and different roles. So it'll be of invaluable use to all of those who want to get in this business. Now, it's time to introduce my guest. She's a designer, she's an art director and a lecturer. Welcome, Sarah Mursal. Hi, Sarah.
Hello, hi Samina, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. And thanks so much for making the time for me today. So tell me, what was your pathway into this industry and why did you choose this industry?
Well, I actually chose this industry by accident because I was one of those kiddies who's watching Star Wars, so that gives my age away a little bit. But
yeah, a great series, right?
Yeah, and I really liked the idea that there's all these animatronics and these creatures being made, and the fact that I think it's Jabba the Hutt actually, and I wondered if that could ever be something. So I was quite young then. I went to school in Saudi Arabia and also in Yorkshire, so I'd actually had quite a nice experience of seeing quite a bit of the world. And one thing that was really different was going into film wasn't necessarily what my parents wanted me to do. So I had to really prove myself. So I did a lot of sculpture, I did a lot of drawing, and I ended up going to Wimbledon School of Art.
Can I just interrupt you? Why weren't your parents keen?
Because they thought that going into the arts wasn't as good as going into the medicine world. Yeah. And they come from a medical background. And so, of course, they wanted me to have a career that was very akin with that, or, you know.
Sounds like you're almost like you come from an Asian family. That's the usual route for, I'm Asian, and it's like medicine, accounting, something really a serious job in their eyes.
But it was very much about that. And it's because they want you to do well, isn't it? They want you to succeed in a sense, to be able to have some stability in life.
And I suppose the arts is something new for them. So it's a bit, it's uncertain and uncharted territory.
Yeah, very much. And my dad was Sudanese and my mum's from Yorkshire. So, they kind of worked really hard to get where they were. They were actually based in Saudi Arabia, as I was saying. And so they'd worked really hard to get to where they were and, established in life and bought a house over here and in England and traveled. So they kind of wanted me to have the same. And this idea of me going into the arts was very much like being a painter and an artist. You don't have there's a lot of hard work involved and very minimal amount of success with it. And I wasn't really asking for that. I was very good at drawing. I was very good at art. I just so happened to fall into that. And I was kind of like the black sheep of the family, if you like. But I also was well traveled. And actually within film, I've realized that those three things are something that's, I still keep up today.
So let's just go back. You mentioned Wimbledon College, did you say? So
Wimbledon School of Art, yes. There was very few in the days when I went. There was very few art colleges that were doing film design specifically. There was lots of theatre. And in fact, I nearly went down the theatre route. But while I was at Wimbledon, I was doing theatre and I crossed over to film design, which was technical planning and technical design. So in those days, we were learning how to draft. We were learning how to do prop making. We were learning how to do animation, model making. There was so many different facets to film design, which was really exciting. And also we were being taken to Pinewood Studios, Shepperton Studios to see the films in the making and having conversations with the construction team, to the storyboard artist, to
well, it sounds incredible experience and really comprehensive. So what was the first step into this business then? How did you do what was the transition?
So I was a bit silly. I went straight into the business because I basically graduated with a first. I did really well. And so I booked a round the world ticket. And that round the world ticket took me to New Zealand to see Lord of the Rings. And then I went to Australia and Sydney, where they were doing Star Wars, and also Moulin Rouge. That gives away how long ago it was. But my idea was is that I was going to go to all the big studios. I went to Hollywood. I was going to go to Canada. And then my mum phoned me up and she said, "You've been away for 2 years, come back to London."
So what were you doing out there? What was happening?
So I was meeting up with people or anybody. I was writing to people and saying, I'm art department. I'm really keen to get involved. I'd love to be involved in Star Wars. But of course, I was quite young. And so the only people that were abroad and working from the UK were head of department. And so I was writing to these people who were head of department saying, would you let me in? Can I come and experience? Can I do work experience for you? And then I turn up at the studios and, you know, some of them were saying, yes, come in and help us make resins. Or others were like, well, yes, you can just do a bit of running for us. But then when I got to New Zealand, I was really lucky actually, because I was island hopping from Cook Islands and I met a director on a plane and she really liked my enthusiasm. So when we got to New Zealand, she said, come and work for my production company. And I literally was the runner, the driver. I did coffee runs. I did
the gopher. I know what it means to be a runner.
Yeah, doing a bit of everything. But it was fine because then bit by bit they were doing shoots and in New Zealand there was a lot of car shoots, and then they were doing I did Burger King, I did pizza ones. And one of the first jobs I had to
were these commercials then?
They were commercials, yeah. So they were the little jobs, as it were, she put it, but they were, you know, high budget in there. And actually you have to really prove yourself when you do these little jobs. You can't just walk in and do a film and no production. Nobody really takes you on in that. You have to have the experience and know how to be on set. And that's what I was learning. I was learning how to be with the crew and learning about different positions and that. So for me, it was a brilliant opportunity. And I ended up being with that company for 6 months, and that was in New Zealand. And I couldn't stay because of visa reasons and restrictions. But what I learned actually was, you know, the process of the whole design, the process of the whole production, the process of it finishing edited, and then when it was on TV.
Yeah.
Which is really exciting.
It gave you a really amazing grounding in the film industry. That sounds awesome. And I love your approach, like just not taking no for an answer and going for it.
Yeah, I think you have to have that. It's not an easy industry. And actually, I still had the voices of my parents in my head, thinking that, you know, this is not going to be a successful area to go into. And I was like, I'm going to prove them wrong. I've got to prove them wrong. So I thought I'd go to the heart of it and I'd speak directly to the people. And hopefully somebody would open that door or open that email or give me an opportunity.
And they did. Clearly they did. That's incredible story. I love your tenacity in the way, you know, you approach that. And I think it's really great that you shared that, because that kind of tenacity and persistence is really necessary in our industry, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And actually, I think it humbles you as well, because the one thing is that you may know loads about your tech, you may know loads about the area that you want to go in. But actually, if you're knocking on doors or you're emailing people or you're on the phone to them, they can hear your voice and they can hear, as you say, that tenacity. And I think what that does is it humbles you. Everybody wants somebody who's nice and friendly and energetic and passionate on their set. It doesn't matter what level you're at, actually, to be honest.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It gave me that. And it really opened doors for me for just being persistent. Yeah.
Well, I love the story. I love your pathway into this business. Now, tell me, for those watching today who might be like, well, what's an art director? Could you explain very briefly what an art director is? And also, what does it mean to be a designer in the context of TV and film?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so an art director often is on commercials. They normally have an art director, and that's because we go into a location and we'll probably repaint the location and then we'll dress it. And the way that we dress it is we go to prop houses and we find props, and then we get those bits of furniture, or smalls as we call them, because it could be items or objects, and we put them in place, especially for filming. And then when we're on camera, which is basically, there's a standby art director as well. And what they do is they look at every shot. So anything that's on camera, we make sure it's in position, or it looks nice, or it looks awkward on purpose. And if we're given a script, we dress to the script. But an art director generally is the term that people go to. There's also a production designer. I don't always call myself a production designer, because I always think of them as feature films or films where you actually have to manage the crew. And within an art department, you have quite a lot of people, quite a big team. Yeah. And you also have to manage the budget as well as the creative look and themes that you've got in the film. So actually an art director is my go-tos, because I often do a lot shorter, quicker jobs. But I'm still doing the design aesthetic. And so for instance, I'll give you an example. Last week I was doing a job and I got given a script, and they're saying, okay, so what do you think about this script? Who are the characters? So I said, well, tell me more about the characters. Are these made up or are they based on real people? And I'll go and find as much evidence about what's going on in the script, and then I'll go and do my own research. And I often research through mood boards or just through Pinterest, which is very addictive. And then I get those ideas together and I sell them through to the producer, who sells them to the client. They tick them off, they say, yes, that's great, that's all cleared. And then I have to go and find these things. So often it's a bit of balancing acts, because I have to find the props and the objects, and I also have to sell them in as an idea.
So let me get this right. So you get approached with a project, and clearly the client has a very particular idea or vision in mind. And then it's for you to interpret or offer something better, even maybe than they had considered, and keep putting those in front of them until everything's agreed upon. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. So sometimes it's actually people are approached to you as a designer or an art director because you have a certain style. I like clean lines, a lot of light and texture, or something that gives a bit of real life. I love reality, but I also love the magic in reality and how we can see something magical in the everyday. And that's generally my theme. So whether I'm doing a commercial or a film, I'll find that theme and I'll try and sell it in. But that's through objects, or maybe it's a piece of furniture, or maybe it's a ring that somebody's having to wear, and they're, or it's just seen on camera. Now, often the script doesn't always tell you about the dressing props and about the surrounds. It'll give an indication, so it could be in a cave or it could be in someone's bedroom, but we don't know what that looks like. And also, as a designer, we get to choose the colors because we can effectively have semiotics, or we can create a feeling with color, which is really important, because actually how we feel and read something.
It can shift the whole look of things, can't it? Color is so vital.
It's really important, and that's what we get to do. We get to play around with color, but we also get to place objects in certain places. So when the camera's going around, it will see it. We don't need to say anything, the characters doesn't need to say anything, but us as the viewer will see it. So that's how we get to script and design something. So it's quite an important role in that sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. And to just give, some of those watching an idea. So for example, if you had to work on a costume, a period drama, then you would have to recreate that whole look of that era within the framework of whatever's being filmed, correct?
Yes. And these days, I'm very much into decolonizing. So I go and look at the research and see where the research has come from and actually how much of it is evident about what was going on. But also we've got this kind of, because we're creatives, we get to play around with time a little bit. We get to play around with objects. And so we could set something in certain architecture, but as soon as we move inside, we get the creativity to play around with those colors, which may not have been around in that period. It depends what the film's saying, but yes. And so research is really important, which is another part that I love.
Is it quite time consuming, or do you have to really speed up that depending on the time frame of when production starts?
Yeah, it really depends. So if I'm on a film, I have probably about 6 weeks prep. And so I'll spend the first week and a half actually just researching. And the research carries on, it evolves. So I get my initial ideas, what sold the film or who's got me in for the job. And then we evolve and we change and we adapt, because also locations change. And in COVID times, locations change very quickly. Yeah. So we have to still translate the idea, or the design, into another space. And so that the camera is still creating the same feeling that we want to create, as it were, or the emotion or the narrative.
So it just sounds such a beautiful job. And of course, I've worked with art directors and stuff, and I know I'm always looking at them going, wow, that's just amazing what they're doing. And what they can create is awesome. So for those people who are watching are probably thinking, wow, that sounds really great, what she does. I want to do that. Now, what are the basics they need to know? And is there any kind of knowledge they need to acquire before they could follow in your footsteps?
Yes. So you have to be passionate about researching, really, and actually knowing your stuff. And so once you get an idea and you've been through the research, the next stage to do this is to make visuals. And so what I would encourage you to do from now is look at SketchUp or Blender or Rhino, and there's CAD as well. And these are 3D programs where you could put your ideas in to be able to present them.
Are any of these free? Because not every
Sketches you can download. Blender's definitely free, and there's loads out there. In fact, I actually ask my students to update me because there's so many on apps as well where you can go and take a picture of a room and then you can redesign it. So it's literally that. It's using a space that you can redesign. Then the next thing is thinking about how much these objects would cost and where would you find them. So sourcing props, that's a really big role. We have what's called as a buyer. So buyers can either buy things literally, go to the shops and buy things, or they go to the prop houses and book things out, or we get things made. So there's that. And then so you've got to think about budget as well. Also, you've got to think about if you're going to a location, how do you get it in and out? How's transport? So what I would encourage them to do is thinking about designing something, choose a location, choose a theme, and just go through the whole process. And if you imagine that's how the art department is made, is whatever process you need in your film, you have somebody to do it as a job. And these are skilled people. So actually the art department is huge. For instance, graphics. If there's somebody who's writing a letter in a film, you've got to think about how they write it. What's it, is it out of ink, or what's the paper made out of? And if you give it to an actor, often it's quite nice to get them to do the right handwriting. But when do you do that? Because they don't want to do it on camera. So then the next thing is actually making sure that your sequence of what you've got coming up matches with what you've got in your set. Because often we film out of sequence, which is when we've got a standby props person and a standby art director to look at the schedule. And so you can, as I say, you film things out of sequence because maybe of the day, or maybe it's the weather, or maybe, and so you've got to think about things like flowers and plants, like
a lot of detail, a lot of attention to detail.
Yeah, sorry, I'm going into like quite a lot there. I was just thinking about the whole process. Like there are so many different roles in the art department, and literally I've probably done most of them. So I was going to go through it.
No, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. Now, this all sounds beautiful, but there's also going to be challenges like there are to any job. So tell me about the challenges and the difficulties within what you do and how you overcome them.
So we're normally the first and the last on set on day of filming because we have to set up and we have to move around the rest of the crew, and then we have to tidy up. That's pretty hard. The days and the hours can be long. It's quite hard work, it's like we do expect,
isn't it?
It's very physical, yeah. Physical hard work. So moving a bit of furniture. As a junior person, so I often take youngsters on, there's a lot of expectation. Like when I was younger and I came back to this country and I was working, I was driving the van, I was getting the props, I was making the props, I was, doing everything. And, you've got to want to be able to do lots of different jobs and do lots of skills, because actually every job is different, if I'm honest. And so demands skills.
So what I'm hearing is be willing to just throw yourself in, whatever opportunity comes, just have a go and just give it your best shot.
Give it your best shot. And you know what? Make it a professional job, because one thing I do see with young people is that they care about things so much that sometimes emotionally it gets a little bit hard. Take that time out, have a refresh. This is a professional job. It's very different to your real life. Yeah. And then as long as you know that, I think it's good, because then you can say, well, I'm working really hard, but I'm really tired. So I need to step out, drink water, take some fresh air, move away from that person who might be being a bit hostile to me. And that is another thing, is that there is often people who get stressed. And in that stress, they get a bit shouty. But we have it all over in lots of walks of life. And so we've just got to adapt. Do not take it personally.
Yeah. I mean, so many people I've spoken to this in our industry, and haven't experienced it myself. You have to develop a thick skin and just walk away, take a deep breath, come back, and you can't take it personally. It's just the environment. And once, often on shoots, I'm sure you'll agree with me. Once somebody does raise their voice a little bit, you step away, you all go for a drink later. It's all good.
You all have a laugh. I mean, I've been on sets where it's actually the director and the main actor just shouting at each other, and the rest of the crew were just standing around a bit uncomfortable. That was unprofessional, but it happens, it's at every level.
People are human, and emotions get agitated and heightened on certain circumstances. So tell me, finally, for those watching who don't necessarily want to work in your department, but not quite sure like which area of TV, radio, or film to go into. What general advice, best piece of advice could you give?
So I was thinking, just apply yourself in lots of situations. And always remember that whatever you experience, one day it will be really useful. There's never too many, there's never, for instance, when I was younger and I wasn't always working in the film industry, I was waitressing. And I was like, what am I doing here? What am I doing this for? This is soul destroying. But actually, it wasn't, because I knew how, well, I've had films, put it that way, that know how to serve things. I've known about how people treat each other. I've had links from those parties of people who were there, who've actually invited me later on in life as a designer and said, oh yes, that was really nice.
It's all about connection, isn't it?
Connection. So put yourself in as many, I wasn't being very clear then, sorry, I was just trying to work it out. I think put yourself in as many situations as possible. Nothing lasts forever. I think that's what it was. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Sarah, great advice. And thank you so much for, sharing about your journey and also giving such really detailed advice about what's happening in your business. Thank you so much. Now, as I shared with you earlier, each week I catch up with a different industry professional who talks to me about, their job role, the highs and lows. And as Sarah's just discovered, it sounds really glamorous and it has got glamorous elements to it, but it is really hard work too. And the whole point of me doing this series is to bring to you all the different job roles available and also the reality of working in TV, radio and film. I do hope Sarah inspired you, and I invite you to join me and my guests each week and get some inspiration from those working in other different roles. You can find details of my series, How to Get into TV, Radio and Film, across my social media platforms and on YouTube. So feel free to follow me in there. And of course, if you've got any questions or you want to leave me a message, feel free to do that and I will definitely check those out. A huge thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.